Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's Carol Baskin from Big Cat Rescue. We had a big old party here at Big Cat Rescue last night for Rebecca, who is going back to the UK. She's been with us for a decade and has been absolutely amazing. So the volunteers threw her a going away party, and it was really nice to get together with everybody. We've not done in person events since COVID hit in March of 2020. And so it was kind of a test run to see how we do with that before we have a full blown volunteer party, which could be maybe twice as many people there. So it was a lot of fun, and I hope nobody got sick. We were outside, so that was helpful. And because Rebecca is a vegan, everything was vegan, which was really nice and respectful for her. Today is Sunday, May the 15th of 2022, and in big cat news around the world, there was a bobcat spotted in Boynton Beach, just doing what bobcats do. Sadly, a tiger cub died in a fight with an adult, and this was in an Indian reserve. The tiger cub was 7 to 8 months old. And what happens is, if there's not enough habitat, the frequently males especially end up being killed by predominant males or dominant males. Authorities were confused about how hybrid cats passed custom inspections. I don't know whether or not this picture is supposed to be a savanna cat, but it's not. It's a serval. And frequently people try to pass off savanna cats or servals as being savanna cats. But in this case, they said that it was imported from Moscow, and they don't know how it managed to pass the customs check unless things were forged, which would not surprise me a bit. Tiger King and Zanesville menageries and hazards on display before Key House Committee examining the Big Cat Public Safety Act today. So that took place last week. The subcommittee got to hear about the Big Cat Public Safety Act. There'll be about 2 weeks before they do what is called a markup, and that's where people can try to change the bill language. Hopefully that will not happen, because people always try to go in and emasculate the bill so that when it passes, it really doesn't do anything. And we hope that we will be able to keep the bill intact and then have it go out, have the leadership send it out to the floor for a full vote. So we'll keep you posted. But in the meanwhile, this is really a critical time for you to be making the call of the wild, because the people who are opposing this bill, they are being very vocal. They are contacting their members in Congress, and we will lose the tiger in the wild in the next 5 years if we don't pass it this year. So that's my belief. We're seeing so many tigers disappearing in the wild, and it's this legal smokescreen in the US that is making it possible for all of the illegal trade in these animals. So we have to do that this year. We can't let people emasculate the bill. I need you to contact your member of Congress at bigcatact.com and ask them to support or champion the Big Cat Public Safety Act. Bobcats are back in southern Ohio. They're seeing more sightings of them in the area. A caracal was hit by a car and left for dead, but he was recovering, and this was in Cape Town, so that is where they are native. Woman takes on a leopard to save 3-year-old daughter in Maharashtra's Chandrapur, but the authorities issued a order to shoot the leopard. You know, those children just look like snack sizes to a big cat. Younger generations are more interested than older generations in having non-domesticated animals as pets. And I think probably the reason for that is all the people who share that crap on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat. Kids see that. They don't understand how cruel it is. All they see is people getting a lot of likes and attention, and so they want to be popular too. And it results in a horrible life for the animals, causes problems with being able to preserve them in the wild, and frequently ends up with people being killed or maimed for life by their exotic pets. Who will look after tigers, wolves, birds, and horses as sanctuarians age? This was by Merritt and Beth Clifton, and is a really good study in how many sanctuaries, both good and bad, and zoos, both good and bad, are failing, and the time at which that typically occurs, as far as like how long they're in operation and how old the founders are. And it was a real eye-opener for me. In fact, I did a follow-up video on my personal channel called What I Love, What I Don't Love. Muskingum Sheriff wants Congress to pass the Big Cat Public Safety Act. Poor Sheriff Lutz. You know, I live in Tampa and we have a suburb called Lutz. And people that come to this area and don't know how to pronounce it always call it Lutz. And same thing for Sheriff Lutz. Everybody keeps calling him Sheriff Lutz. And his pronunciation is Sheriff Lutz. I don't know how to make that connection in your head other than the fact that he's a sheriff. He goes after bad guys who loot places. So it's Lutz. And he came and testified on behalf of the Big Cat Public Safety Act and why we absolutely need it to pass in order to protect our sheriffs and deputies and police officers and firefighters and all of those first responders who should never have to deal with a big cat when they get on the scene. Carol Baskin talks tiger protection at Taking Action for Animals and Tiger King, so I plan to be speaking on those topics there. That's going to be in July. Stunning new wildlife film inspires Texans to keep Texas beautiful. I can't wait to see that because it's got an ocelot in it. They used to be native to Texas before they were just about completely wiped out. Bobcat burst into a Windsor home and attacks the residents. So what I heard about this was that apparently a bobcat was chasing a domestic cat and the cat ran into the house and the bobcat came in after it, and the people managed to get the bobcat shut into their bathroom, but not before they ended up being bitten and scratched. Anytime a person is bitten or scratched by a wild cat, the cat has to have its head cut off and tested for rabies because there's no other test to know whether or not the person was contaminated with rabies, and you can die from that. And taking the taking the shots after the fact are thousands and thousands of dollars, and people don't want to invest that kind of money into a bunch of painful shots if they can just kill the cat and test them. So it's another reason why these cats don't belong in private possession, because it's a whole lot more likely that you're going to be bitten by a captive bobcat than a wild one. Tiger cubs and hornbills seized from a house in Thailand's Nakhon Ratchasima. Don't know how they got their hands on a baby tiger cub. Maha, elderly woman mauled to death by a tiger in Tabadoba Reserve. And typically what happens, this says it was in the buffer zone between the reserve and the town. And so what I just recently learned in Tiger 24 is that they have reserves for the tigers. They have a buffer zone around the tigers in case the tigers wander out of the reserve. And then you have the general population. But the general population keeps going into these buffer areas and sometimes directly into the tigers' areas to steal firewood and to, one of the things I thought was really interesting in Tiger 24, they go in there to defecate because they don't have proper sewage in their towns. And so rather than do it in town, they go do it in the tiger fields or the tiger's home. And they end up being killed by the tigers when they do that. So we just need to keep people out of protected places and we won't have these problems. 3 drivers and guides were banned for chasing a big cat in Ranthambore. And good. I'm so glad that happened because that was another thing I saw in Tiger 24. And you know this stuff happens, but until you see it visually on the screen and see all of these trucks, jeeps, constantly harassing and following these tigers through their habitat. And they do it because people pay a lot of money to come see the tigers. We could be doing all of that with remote cameras instead, that we're not taxing the cats, not causing it to make it difficult for them to breed or raise their cubs or for them to hunt. And so these people just go in there and desecrate these sacred places for these wild animals just by being there. And I'm glad to hear that these guys were actually banned. So I have a coordinator report. Actually, I have several since May the 12th. This one was actually written on May the 12th, but not until 7 p.m. So first one's from Jordan Elaine, who says, another great Thursday is in the books. Marie started off with AM Meds and Barbara with AM Supplements. Big cat lockouts were done by Mark, Fred, and Barbara B. Small cat lockouts were done by Susan and MJ. The big cats were fed by MJ, Barbara B., Marie, and Mark, while the small cats were fed by Fred, Ryan, Susan, and Kat. While everyone was out feeding, Nisha and I cleaned the rat cages. After the feeding dishes were all cleaned up, the cleaners went out. The big cats were cleaned by Barbara B., Marie, Fred, and Mark, while the small cats were cleaned by Nisha, Susan, Ryan, and MJ. While the cleaners were out, Kat took care of the rehab bobcats and worked on food prep, and afterwards helped me scrub Max Tiger, Flint and Nabisco's platform for them to be ready to come back home. After that was done, Cat weed-eated by Jasmine and then started weed-eating around vacation rotation. Once the cleaners got back, Nisha, Ryan, and Fred finished up food prep. After everyone was filled up with lunch, the project teams went out. Mark and Brittany raked up around the enclosure between Lovey, Kelowna, and Dryden. Nisha, Fred, and Kat continued weed-eating the vacation rotation, and Ryan helped with the cat moves. The day ended with Kat doing PM meds and interns doing PM chores. Thank you, everyone who came in today. Lauren Grant on May the 13th said, "We had a pretty great day today. Beth Ann did AM supplements and Afton did AM meds. The intern force, Kat, Jordan, Nisha, and Ryan, made sure the little cats all got breakfast. Beth Ann, Bonnie, and I fed the big cats. Ryan, Nisha, and Jordan cleaned the little cats. Kat, Bonnie, Beth Ann, and I cleaned the big cats. After cleaning, Jordan and Kat did meat inventory, Ryan took his meds class, and Nisha had an early lunch so she could take care of rehabs after a quick break. Beth Ann, Kat, and Bonnie took care of the daily sickle and enrichment cats. Bonnie and Beth Ann made a ton of blood sickles to stock up for next week, because it's getting hot. Ryan, Kat, and Jordan did food prep after lunch and then started working on cleaning up the perimeter wall. They were able to weed eat the outside wall from the recovery hospital to the rehab cages. Holy cats. That's like 2,000 feet. Jordan did PM meds and supplements. Thank you all for a great day. And the last one I have is from Angie Gabor. This is from 2 hours ago. And she says, "Another great Saturday." Today is Sunday, but apparently she just posted it. "We were a little thin, but we made it work and had a great day. We started early with Amanda and Rich for meds and supplements. Sarah took care of the AM chores and meat pull with some help from Rich. I understand Sarah was also hugely responsible for the party last night, along with the Glitter Squad or Appreciation Team, as they call themselves. Babs and Rich took care of all of the lockouts before feeding. Sarah, Babs, and Rich and I fed the big cats. Amanda, Rich, and I fed the little cats. The cleaners for the day were Amanda, Kristen, and I for the little cats, Rich, Sarah, Babs, and Matt for the big cats. McCunth took care of the food prep all by himself and took his animal observation class. After lunch, Sarah took care of as many of the PM chores as she could. Babs helped Amanda and Kristen with the paperless enrichment for their live stream. At 2 p.m., Amanda and Kristen went live and handed out paperless enrichment. When they're talking about this is a bunch of our cats aren't allowed to get paper because they eat it. And so the enrichment team came up with some, and Jamie helped, come up with some really clever ways of delivering our enrichment, the spices and all of the little things that we give them in things like banana leaves and rice paper. There's a whole video about it on youtube.com/Big Cat Rescue. Thank you to Rich, Amanda, and Kristen for working on the project to weed whack around Simba Tiger's enclosure. After that, we had some fun cat time with operant conditioning and enrichment handouts. The day closed with Rich doing PM supplements, Amanda doing PM meds, and Kristen finishing up PM chores. Great people, great fun. And the operant conditioning that you saw there, one you may have noticed in the photos behind me. One is Beth Ann Bluter working with Des the serval. Des only has 3 legs, and of course he's got a lot of arthritis in his old spine, and so it's very hard for him to groom himself. And so she's working with a back scratcher to scratch those mats off of his back. And if you've ever tried to comb the knots out of your pet cat, they don't take too kindly to it. So you got to make it a really pleasurable experience for them to tolerate it. And it looked like it was working quite well. The cat seemed to be very happy to be there and getting all of his scritches and all of his mats removed. You can follow us on all of the social channels. We are Big Cat Rescue everywhere. And please remember to contact your member of Congress at bigcatact.com and ask them to champion the Big Cat Public Safety Act. Mwah!